Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Peace and love on Brother Ali. It's a Travelers Podcast. This is an episode that we've been waiting for. It's one that we've been really looking forward to since we started this podcast. Every week you hear us talk about the fact that Zakat Foundation has been rocking with us from day one. And the reason that we were able to have that relationship with this global Muslim-led humanitarian organization is because of my relationship with Amna Mirza. Amna she's a marketing and branding specialist. She's a world-class expert in the field of marketing and branding. She's originally from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, and comes from an incredible family. You know, you hear us talk a little bit about the fact that her father was a community leader, actually a spiritual and religious leader in that community from one of the major organizations and kind of global associations called Tablighi Jamaat, which is really prevalent in the Indian subcontinent in South Asia. Amna comes from Punjabi, a Pakistani immigrant family, and grew up in Ottawa. And she's just done amazing, incredible work. I mean, she started out at one of the biggest organizations and marketing firms. She was doing that and then also working in music. So she was like working at a music store and also at Flashman Hillard, which is a world-class marketing firm, one of the biggest ones. She's done a lot of really incredible work, including Sirius XM Radio. She worked with Howard Stern and Oprah Winfrey. She worked on their NFL strategy. She worked at PBS. She worked with Anthony Bourdain. She worked with Michelle Obama. Just has done an incredible amount of stuff. And what you'll hear in this conversation is that at some point, she really just had this calling in her soul that was saying, you know, that this is a tremendous power, the ability to market, the ability to tell stories, the ability to connect the work that people are doing with the heart of the public. And that's one of the main things that I'm really asking her about here is like, what is marketing? It's such a pejorative term to a lot of like underground, hardcore, avant-garde artists and creatives, you know, that like, oh, these people aren't better than us. They just have, it's actually a famous Immortal Technique line from back in the day where he says, no one's better than me. They just have better marketing schemes. You know, he says something like, if 1 million people bought your record, it just means that 1 million people are stupid, something like that. But I mean, that's like the aesthetic that we come from. But really having the chance to talk to Amna about how important marketing really is for the fact that you have these people that are doing amazing work. People tell me all the time, like, how come you're not more well-known? How come, you know, you're such a secret? Your music is amazing. How come you're not, you know, up there with other artists? And part of it is that I don't always know if I have a mind for being able to tell my story to others in a way that is able to convey to them what it is that we're doing. That's a very different science and a very different art. And so Amna is somebody that from a very young age really mastered that science and that art and said, this is a powerful thing that can be used for good. And coming from the Muslim community, wanted to really be able to elevate the stories and the representation not only of the Muslim community, but also for brown people, for, you know, people of color, from people from the subcontinent, for women in those spaces. And so she entered into the Muslim nonprofit spaces and into that industry, and immediately started coming across all sorts of challenges and difficulties, some of which are particular to the Muslim community. Some of them are really common for marginalized communities, trying to, you know, convey who we are and what we are about to the broader society and culture. But that's where she and I met, was that I was brought into an organization. I was invited to perform and to take part in a big event that they were having. And I said yes to the teacher, and then in between time, some of the other folks started working on what that actually would mean, the logistics and things like that. And, you know, my booking agent and my managers and stuff, they're not going to negotiate super hardcore with these nonprofit orgs. Also, a lot of people on my team are not Muslim, and so they just kind of like, Ali respects these people. This is an internal community thing. And so a lot of times I just get treated like really poorly in those spaces. So I was brought into this situation because I was invited by one of the scholars, one of the community elders and leaders that I love and respect. And then Amna also was brought in after the fact. So she was just told, Brother Ali is good. You know what I'm saying? So we ended up having a conversation after it was all said and done where we really just bonded over the fact that as people from that love our community, engage in our community, that come from having expertise in our fields, and then entering into these community spaces, just the challenges there. But then Amna went on to work at Zakat Foundation. And one of the programs and projects I talk about all the time is her amazing creativity, her courage to really reshape so much about the way that that specifically orphan relief is carried out. And so you'll hear us talk about that in the episode. But this is a really major one. This is a really important one. I say at the end, but I want to make sure I say it at the beginning too, that we did not invite Amna because of the fact that Zakat Foundation is our sponsor. We invited her because she's somebody that I look at as a fellow artist who is making strides and sacrifices to use the art to have a positive impact on the world and ultimately on her own soul. So we talk about being co-travelers in a journey of life. This is one of these people that I just really love and appreciate and admire so much. And I have to say that from her work with this program and this project for supporting orphans, I mean, she just got some of the most prestigious awards. So the Hermes Award, she got the Platinum Award for Strategy and Marketing. She also was on the cover of LA Weekly and the cover of New York Magazine. I mean, she's been celebrated for this work that she's done because she took a major chance at ruffling a lot of feathers for telling the truth about the kind of unspoken bias and racism and anti-blackness and white supremacy, kind of internalized white supremacy within some of these campaigns and way of doing things. So this is just somebody that I'm just really grateful to be talking to. We're brought to you, as always, by the Zakat Foundation and by BetterHelp online therapy platform. Enjoy this episode of the Travelers Podcast. Thank you so much for the reschedule, and I really appreciate it.
Of course. So cool. Who gets to talk to you 2 days in a row?
The people who talk to me every day are like, man, who...
How can we not talk to you 2 days?
Yeah, how can we get a day off of talking to this guy, hearing all this guy's opinions of everything?
Oh my God. That was like my husband last night. I stayed up really late to watch the election coverage, which is just a geeky thing that I do. And he was like, enough. He's like, stop talking about it. I was like, no, this is, I was just sharing my insights. And he was like, oh my God, how can you stop talking about the elections? He's like, it's at 1:00 in the morning. Turn off the TV. And I was just like, I don't know why. I just love that stuff. And he was over it.
Have you ever thought about, I know it's one of the things that like marketers do sometimes is work on political campaigns. Have you ever thought about, or have you ever, I know you did work with Michelle Obama, but it was not campaign work, right?
No, it was not. So my younger brother, Ibrahim Abi Khan, actually is the first Muslim elected into what in Canada is called the Conservative Party. But I feel like when I say conservatives, Americans freak out a bit. But they are, I think, kind of like the center. But he was elected the first member of the Legislative Assembly, first Muslim, and I helped him with a lot of his messaging and speech writing and branding. And now I'm trying to work with him on this interesting balance of like how to be how to use your platform for good in a way that serves not only, the people of your, county constituency, but also people who share your faith, people who share the color of your skin. And it's interesting navigating that in a political, environment. And you had, the amazing Ilhan Omar on your show. And I love that episode, just listening to her journey and the stuff that she faces. So, Yeah, I feel like if I was in a different place in my life, I would move to Winnipeg, Canada, and run his next campaign and be there for him. And inshallah, I will. But I think integrating Muslim voices into the political sphere, the creative sphere, marketing, branding, humanitarian, like we should be everywhere, and we're not. And so people like us have to do everything we can to influence those environments.
And it's, it really gets to what's so incredible about what you do. I mean, you're very early in your career still. I mean, you're well established, but to be so young, you're extremely celebrated. Your resume is really incredible. I will cover a lot of that probably in the intro, and I won't make you sit here and listen to it. But I mean, it's really incredible. Like you are a developing master in your field in marketing and branding. And for so many people, especially artists, especially like underground, artists like myself that are like fighting the good fight every day and like trying to be conscious and trying to have a good message and trying to align with things that we care about. There are so many times that we see people that feel like they're maybe less talented or less principled, but they understand marketing better, and those people surpass us. And so for a lot of people, that are driven from a sense of purpose, marketing and branding is almost a negative word. But the more that I've learned about it, the more that I've learned how necessary and important it really is. And I just wonder if we could start with you giving us an idea of what does marketing and branding mean to you, and what's your heart connection with the idea of marketing?
Yeah, for me, it's really all comes back to storytelling and telling the story of yourself or your product in a genuine way that connects with what you really feel and want that thing to be in the world. And for me, connecting a genuine desire and being honest about that. Like if it's I just want to make money or I want to be the most controversial figure in this, that's cool. Just be honest about it and then we can build a
Right.
brand around that. And I think a lot of people sell themselves short, or organizations or companies, because they think brand is ugly or not for them. And for nonprofits, especially, Muslim orgs, they struggle. And so they think, "Oh, no, we are this." But for me, what I tell my clients and people I work with, and a brand is what other people think of you. It's not what you think about yourself, because they're often not connected. But once you can make that connection and be authentic in the story that you tell, all goodness, all good things will follow. And consumers are smart, right? Like they have everything at their fingertips. So if you're trying to sell something or do something that's not authentic or genuine, people will find that out. And once you kind of, it's not a cancel culture thing. It's just once you disconnect from that honesty, that genuineness, it's really hard to get people back into your favor, if you will.
Mhm.
Eh, It's important. Brand is everything.
Yeah, it just really strikes me that it's like the relationship that a person has with the public. And, in order to be effective, in order even to really offer the best of like the talents and the gifts that we've been given that we want to offer, because, and it could be used for any type of project or product or desire. Like in order to be able to do that, like we have to really be able to communicate what it is and the fact that it exists and the fact that we're here. I wonder though, so because of social media, the idea of being an influencer, the idea of being a content creator, the idea of being a public personality, like that's something that so many people have access to now. And it almost feels like we have a responsibility to do that. Like people really, people that we know will be off social media for a month and they'll come back and apologize for it. Like, hey, you guys, I'm really sorry I haven't posted. I've just been going through this and that, and. But
Yeah.
then on the other side, like you see people start to brand themselves and start to market themselves in ways that aren't maybe authentic, or it might be part of who we are. But how do you see the role of social media in everyday people starting to market ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can't hide from it. And, TikTok, I think, surpassed Google in terms of search. So people are using TikTok as a means to get their information and their news. And it's really scary because when you think about the algorithms and the way social media is, and uh, you surround yourself with people who think like you, look like you, talk like you, share your political opinions. And then if you're only getting information from those people, you really are in an echo chamber. If you're struggling with something around people who are going through the same struggle, you benefit from that. But if you're not forced to kind of break out of that and to explore and to get news or information or stories from different places, that's bad. The good of social media is that people expect to have you at the touch of their fingertips. Like if they want to know what's going on with Brother Ali's life, they want to go on social media, connect with you, see what you're saying. And if you don't, you're right. They do feel a little bit like, you've abandoned them. So you have that personal connection that you have to maintain with your fans or followers. But also the algorithm screws you over because if you're not posting enough, you're left out of, you know, the conversation. You won't show up in feed. And so it is this like science and art that I think marketing really always needs to be one on top of, understand how to work within those algorithms or be creative to work around it. I love it because I think creators now have a platform that they're not tied to being picked up by big labels or have to prove that they're worth a big marketing spend. I think that's really amazing for creators. I think, again, though, staying genuine to what is it you're trying to do is really important. And you got to keep that real on social. Otherwise, it's again people are going to call you out now, right? And so you have to be smart, but we can't ignore it.
And one of the main things that I've noticed is that, certain decisions that I've made. So, like, I don't post my children because
Hmm.
I did that with my eldest son when he was young. Like, I had him in, I mean, he's in MTV commercials and all type of stuff. He's on my records. I got all these songs about him.
Yeah.
And then when he got to be a young adult, I was like, man, I don't, I don't know if I had the right to do that to you. You know what I'm saying? Because now he's struggling with this thing that, like, because he makes music and he has felt like he's been in my shadow and like he's trying to
Mm.
distance himself from whatever my brand is and all that stuff. So with the younger children, I don't share any of them. And also arguments, like when people argue in the comment section, I'll see that if people start, especially if somebody comes at me, if somebody is like, "You should be doing this," and why aren't you? The big thing now is like white lady activists telling me they thought I was the good kind of Muslim until I didn't say what they wanted me to say about Iran, and so like they're really upset with me because I didn't say. And there's a million issues that I haven't said anything about. Like I speak to
Right.
my brand is that I speak about groups that I'm in, and like I self-critique groups that I'm in and that most of my listeners are also in. And it's because that's where I believe that there's something that can be done about that stuff. So if people come at me and then an argument starts, I will notice that post will pick up
Yeah.
traction so fast. Like
Yeah.
suddenly they're showing it to everybody. But me and Brendan have made a dedication that like this is not going to be a place where people argue. There's so many places on the internet for that. It just brings out the worst in people. It's not what we're about. And so I hide those comments, delete those comments, and as soon as that happens, it's almost like the algorithms are like, "Oh, we thought you were serious. We
Yeah.
thought you were," you know what I'm saying? Never mind. You're not part of this thing, and engagement will just stop immediately. It like screeches to a halt
Yeah.
for making those decisions. Like I just, these aren't things that I want to participate in.
And the scary thing is a lot of those comments probably aren't even genuine. They're like hired hands to come and troll and to comment just to cause controversy, right? Like I noticed, I think your show about Ilhan Omar had a lot of comments and conversations, on it, and the comments were really, really active. And you know, some people, you're right. If it's not a highly engaged post, it won't get circulated, and then you have to make this, judgment. And that's where I think that you have to come back to, what is the purpose of you being around and what is the goodness that you're trying to do. And if you're not, then you're not. But if you are, that's where you use your platform for good.
Yeah, it's deep. You know, it's interesting that like so many of like we have these tools that are really powerful, and I think it's good to have tension around them. Like the same way that I was saying that now the idea of marketing and branding is a dirty word for a lot of people. I mean, you and I both know, like your father was one of the founders of the Tablighi Jamaat, which for anybody that knows that movement knows that this is a movement of people that a lot of people have had the most beautiful communal experiences in, because people get together, they study together, they get this immediate, like very real lived sense of embodied community, because these are Muslims that travel together, they go to different communities, but then they also show up and they encourage the rest of us to like live our religion in a more complete way. You know what I'm saying? And so there are people that are just like, oh man, the Tablighi Jamaat is coming. Like people have had so many different experiences with them. It'd be interesting to see what a marketing campaign could look like. But so
They need a
for
rebrand.
the yeah, absolutely. Um, but it's interesting that there are those in the Islamic tradition, scholars in the past, that have really said that musical instruments outside of drumming and poetry and the voice, some of them have straight up said that those things are forbidden. It never was the consensus, but some have even said it's the majority that said that things like guitars and pianos and flutes and stringed instruments and things like that, but there are definitely a large part of our scholarship. Some of the most dedicated, renowned scholars have said it's not that those things are forbidden in and of themselves. It's just that the ability of those instruments to impact the heart is so great that we have to be careful how we use them, but also like what we listen to,
Hmm.
because an instrument like a piano, the way that those chords are played, the timing of them can do things to our heart that we haven't even given permission for. And so it's not that they're necessarily haram in and of themselves, but that the way that we engage them has to be really careful. So if somebody's going to go into music, they should be really serious about what their own intention is. And it seems to me that marketing is a similar thing, that it
Hmm.
could be used for incredible good. It can also be used to open the heart and to affect the hearts of people in ways that are, that it can really go either way.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the reasons that me and you connect so deeply, because I see you as a great artist who is struggling and sacrificing to make sure that, as you continue to master this art, that you also are really dead set and you're resolute on like this will be used only for things that benefit my community and humanity at large. And
Yeah.
so
Alhamdulillah.
that's what I'm really interested in sharing with people.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I don't know what else there is to life if it's not to leave it better or do something good. Like I think about something that's really dark and I'll share it with you is like I think about when I die and in the Western tradition of like a eulogy or people who speak, like what would they say about me?
Hmm.
And not out loud, but what would they say about me, to
Mm,
themselves or
mm,
think
mm,
about me?
hmm.
And that's nothing in comparison to the deeds that I would have left behind or what my account is going to be on the other side, right? And when you think about that, it's scary to me for people who I have hurt or said things or, you know, um, like I don't want to leave with people not having a good opinion of me because that means that, inshallah, I've lived my life in a way that like, when I meet my creator, he'll also have a good opinion of me and the things that I have done will leave a legacy for my daughters. I mean, I started to feel this real big pull and I'm a practicing Muslim, alhamdulillah. I'm very spiritual, and I just have become over the last like decade or so, maybe after I had my daughters, your heart becomes soft. I think after you have children it changes you, but um I just think that there's nothing except for luck and that I was born in Canada instead of in Pakistan, in a village somewhere else, in a poverty-stricken world, in a community that suffered and struggled for water. Like there's nothing, you know. It's like it's Allah, and like when I was made and my soul was put in, I was going to be born and raised in Ottawa, Canada. Does that circumstance then remove me from any responsibility of helping people who look like me or who are
Mm-hmm.
suffering? I just think it's this interesting notion of like, I'm so lucky that I'm here, and that then means you don't have to think about other people, you don't have to help other people. And so when I joined the Cat Foundation, it was this like completion of what this thing I had been searching for. And
Mm-mm-mm.
it's not perfect, right? Every day.
I mean, come
It's
on.
it's it's hard. I mean,
Right.
I laugh because when my boss hears this, it's like I want to quit every day, and then I'm online till midnight working because I love it so much, alhamdulillah.
Right.
But I just gotta, everybody has to do some good. Otherwise, it's like, what are you doing? It's like there's so much of self-indulgent stuff that you can do. There's only so much like your nafs and your ego can drive you. There's only so many things you can accumulate. Um, and for me, it's doing this work, and I look at it like, yeah, sometimes it's a drop in the bucket. Like I'm only helping, the worldwide orphan population is, uh, 10,000 children are orphaned a day, it says. Like, it's insane. Um, so I'm helping one, big deal. But it is a big deal. Like, you're
Mm.
helping that one child. To that child, their everything has changed. Their
That's right.
universe
That's
has
right.
changed.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's like, yeah, I'm going to keep doing drops in the bucket, and I'm going to try to keep doing this. And I'm going to, if I put out an ad or a banner or an email that someone reads and it touches their heart and it makes them do good, inshallah, may that be counted in my like deeds, my book of
Amen.
good deeds, right?
Amen.
And
Amen. And may it be multiplied beyond your wildest dreams.
inshallah, that's, I want my kids to be happy. And it gives my kids like a reality check when they look at a poster or something I'm working on, and they're like, why does that girl doesn't have any shoes on, but she's so happy. And like we have this beautiful photo of this girl in Gaza, and she has a backpack and a really nice sweater, and around her is just like rubble. And she's reading a book, like she's reading a school book. We used it for our back to school campaign. And so it's rubble already. The environment is the juxtaposition of her being this beautiful, happy, innocent child walking through war torn. And then you look close and she doesn't have any shoes on.
Mm.
And my girls are like, Mama, like, why doesn't she have shoes on? And I tell her, there's a whole world that you don't know about because you live in this, alhamdulillah, privileged life. But you know what? When you're fighting in the morning because you don't want to wear your Nikes and you want to wear your Adidas, this
Mm-hmm.
is what life is like. And this could have been you. And it's by
Right.
virtue of luck and kismet and Allah's mercy on you that you don't. But that's why you got to pay it forward. And that's also the principle of zakat in our faith, right? So it's profound for me on many levels.
So you started early on. You're at Fleischman Hillard, which is like one of the biggest, ad agencies in the world. You also did a major rebrand for Blue Shield, right?
Yeah.
And ended up running their creative studio. You worked at Sirius XM. You worked on Howard Stern and Oprah Winfrey. You worked with Michelle Obama. Like you did all of these really prestigious things.
Yeah.
I wonder which of those felt the most prestigious to you, and starting out so young and then moving up into such rarefied air in that space. What is the pull? Like, what's the draw for people that are in that area and stay there, and continue to pursue that type of prestige? Like, what is it? What's it really like? I mean, we've all watched Mad Men, you know what I'm saying? But I know that people think they know what being on tour is like. Like, I've also played Coachella and on the
Yeah.
main stage, and people think they know what the draw of that is. And I'm like, man, you have no clue. So I'm curious, when you're in those prestigious areas in marketing, like, what is that really like, and what's the draw like?
I mean, it's such a creative explosion on
Mm.
the best day, right? There's a lot of annoying days, but on the best in the best moments, you get to take so I think for me, it's I'm a creative strategist. So like I was saying earlier, like I couldn't draw a picture to save my life, right? I
Mhm.
couldn't paint anything, but I understand the strategy and like what is the behavior we're trying to change. And for me, the power behind that is really what draws me. Is like I get to come up with a creative approach to solve that strategic problem that's going to then result in ABC. And
Mm.
so it's things like, it's a silly example, but I'll give you the good and the bad is when I was at SiriusXM, I worked on, NFL Network, and it was like there's only so many ways you can get people to purchase the NFL Network channel on SiriusXM. And but it's so fun when you get to think of like what's the tagline and what is the demo, like who are the people who are like listening to this and who actually that's why data is so important and it's a marketer's best friend. And what I think smaller orgs or smaller minded leaders miss is that it's not just a pretty flyer. It's like who's going to be engaging with that flyer, who is your audience. And so having that data and then saying, yeah, it's mostly men, it's mostly men from actually, I think like southern states was like our biggest, demo for folks who were buying into the NFL network. So the tag is, are you fan enough? And it was a play on, are you man enough to get up your subscription? And it
Mm.
worked. And it was really, brilliant and fun. So I think when you get to see the creativity flow and the energy that you get from that. And then when you see it in market, it's like, oh, that's so cool. Like I love it when I see my work or something that I helped put together in the market. Um, it just, gives you that high that you want to go back and do it again. And so, you know, it's been a lot of fun. I just feel though that the work I do here at Zakat Foundation, um, it's what keeps me up at night. It's
Mhm.
what I feel deeply connected to our beneficiaries, and I worry about like an amana, like a trust from the people that like
Mhm.
somebody gave money to do this, and oh my God, what if I market something and that actually didn't happen, for example,
Right,
or
right,
I
right,
worry
right.
about these things. I overthink it maybe, but um, it does keep me up at nights.
So when you're, so I wonder if a dude, in Texas that's a Cowboys fan that's buying this package, are you fan enough? That's like a challenge, you know what I'm saying? And like you're speaking to something that's very specific in that culture. I wonder if they would have any clue that this like young brown Pakistani Canadian lady is the one who understood their psychology well enough to challenge them in that way and put forth that kind of how much of it is how much of it is you learning the very specific demographic and how much of it is just human nature.
I think it's art. I think it has to be both. You have to have good instincts. I mean, I
Mm,
think if just coming off the midterm election results and like what all the polls were telling you and what we learned many years ago through the Hillary Clinton and Trump elections, of polling is never right, right? So you have to
mm,
have that voice in the room that is confident enough, strong enough to say, but we had I had an opportunity at one of my past gigs. It was, a Muslim org to invite an actually an entertainer who was like just so like popular and we would have had hundreds and thousands of people like watch or engage and it wasn't my instinct was that that wasn't the right fit for that organization regardless of like how many new you know audience data points segments we would have gotten, maybe some donations, some micro first time donations. It wasn't the right uh, person for our event. And I think that is always what you need to trust because that inner voice is important. And if you're in tune with it enough and you're confident enough, I think that listening to that is really important because the data is half of the picture, but the instinct and the kind of the art of it fulfills the rest of that picture.
The Travelers Podcast is sponsored this week by BetterHelp online therapy platform. And when you use our link to sign up with them, you get a discount and we get a commission that helps support the work that we do here on the Travelers Podcast. We're major proponents of mental health and specifically of therapy and overall wellness and well-being. And so many people are starting to get used to the idea of therapy, but so many people still aren't actually doing it. It's a tough step to take, because there's so much stigma around it. There's so many misconceptions about it. Please go back and listen to the episode that I did with Dr. Ebony, maybe a month back. Dr. Ebony is a therapist, and I spent a lot of that time just doing what I was calling demystifying mental health, just to talk about what are the misconceptions about it and what does therapy actually look like when you're in there doing it. Also check out our episode with Resma Menakem, who's talking about processing trauma and specifically racialized trauma and communal trauma, family trauma. These are all things that are really important. And like I said, it's difficult to take that step because first of all, we got to get over all of our own stuff that like, I'm going to take a look inside me. And I know that there's stuff in there that needs to be ironed out, because I have behaviors that I don't feel in control of. You know what I'm saying? I find myself, I'm yelling at my kids and I don't want to yell at them, but I have these frustration and I have these responses to things that happen that I don't always understand. If I find myself doing things that I don't believe in my heart, that I don't feel proud of, that I don't feel good about after doing them, if I'm making promises to myself about ways that I'm going to behave better in the future, and without even realizing how I get off track, I suddenly find myself going back to that place over and over and over again and hurting myself with my decisions, hurting the people that I love, whether I'm eating things, looking at things, drinking things, smoking things, talking to people in ways, saying stuff, exposing myself to people and relationships, and being in these environments that are bad for me. And I know they're bad and I keep going back to them. Then like, what is the wires are crossed somewhere inside. And it doesn't mean that something's wrong with me. It just probably means that there's some experience that I've had or some narrative that I have or some thinking or some pattern that I have that's deeply embedded in me and ingrained in me. And having somebody to talk through those things with, who's trained and licensed like the people at BetterHelp are, can be really helpful, just so that I can hear myself tell my stories to somebody else. I can hear myself say out loud the things that I've been saying in my own mind for years and years, and have a trained, objective, otherwise disinterested person just say, okay, so wait, but what about this part? And you realize like, man, I never thought about that. Okay, but so I'm hearing you say this. When you say this, you lean in. When you say this thing, your face does that. Just saying that to somebody can open a doorway to explore parts of ourselves that we just hadn't taken the opportunity to look at before. Again, doesn't mean anything's wrong with us, but making that decision internally is difficult enough, but then taking the next step of how do I find a therapist? How do I connect with them? How am I going to pay for it? How am I going to make time for it? How am I going to get there? BetterHelp is really, really set up well to break down a lot of those barriers. You go to BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/travelers, and that will take you to a questionnaire. First of all, that's going to let them know that we suggested that you connect with them. And so you'll get a discount because you do that, and they also give us a commission so that we can do the work that we do here. They support our work when that happens. You go to a questionnaire where they ask you about what is it that's bringing you here? Are there certain types of therapists that you'd like to speak to? Are there certain issues that you want to start working on? You go immediately from that to choosing your therapist. And if you ever feel like, okay, I thought this person seemed like they'd be right on paper, but I'm just not feeling it. I just don't feel connected to them. I don't like our flow of communication. I don't trust them. I don't feel like they get it. I don't know. Maybe there's nothing wrong with either one of us. It's just not a match. You just hit a button, change therapists. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. What are the things that you want to look for in your next therapist? No questions asked, no hard feelings, no funny business, no change in schedule. Once you find your therapist, then you get access to their calendar. And you poke around in their calendar and find the time that you want that works well for you. Then you're going to decide, do you want to see them on the computer or on your phone? Do you want to do like a FaceTime type of call? It's on their completely confidential platform. And everything that you do with them is completely confidential, by the way. People's licenses depend on it. So you decide, like, do I want to talk to them face to face, or do I just want to hear their voice, or do I want to start by just texting with them? So really, it puts the client, the user, the person who's seeking mental health, it puts us in control. I use BetterHelp because of the fact that I don't live in America and I'm self-employed, so I don't have insurance, or I don't have good insurance. And I was able to tell them what's going on with me financially, and they were able to set a price point that works for me. And I started talking to a therapist, and almost immediately I benefited from it. I learned about BetterHelp on a podcast. And so we reached out to them and we started this partnership with them that I'm really grateful for. So go to BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/travelers, and start the journey to healing. You were saying that when you were at Sirius was one of the first times that you started to realize, like, I'm not, my voice isn't resonating here the way that I need it to. You know what I mean? Being the only brown woman in the room, having having this experience and having this expertise and having this creativity and trying to bring it forward. What was the moment? Because I know that you made sacrifices, you know what I mean? So I think after that, you went to PBS for a while, hoping that would
So
be the,
it was actually the crazy thing is I left Sirius because I got this opportunity to do brand strategy at PBS, and I was so
okay.
hopeful that, like, this is gonna be so cool. I get to work on really, important content for communities that I belong to.
Mm-hmm.
And PBS was when I kinda had my rude awakening, if you will, where I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Wait a minute. This is like I feel like this is not what it's supposed to be."
Yeah.
And I couldn't exactly vocalize it. Like, I couldn't say it. It just was like I was annoyed by it. I was like, this is, a decade ago. I was like, how come people who are from the communities that you guys are trying to market this show to are not the ones who are working on the creative,
Mm-hmm.
are not the ones who are, and that's where you might have the data, but you cannot put a marketing campaign together. And I will stand by this. Even like multi-million dollar organizations, I'm sorry, if you're working on a campaign and you're targeting a Muslim market and you have all the data in the world and you don't have Muslims working on that campaign, you will not be as successful as you will if you had them. And so I was there for a couple of years and I noticed this was happening. And so I left and I went to Travel Channel, Scripps Networks, and I instantly got put on Anthony Bourdain, the late Anthony Bourdain's show, The Layover, with Travel Channel, and then the shoe dropped that he was leaving and going to CNN, and so I got moved to another talent, and there's nothing wrong with people who do it because some people are really good at it. For me, it just wasn't my cup of tea of promoting this man eating his way through the country. Like, how many sandwiches can he eat? And I was just like, you know, but also my husband he was doing a PhD, and he finished, and we had the opportunity to move back to the Bay. And so I left that job, after not being there for very long, but learned a lot. And then I joined independent television service, ITVS,
Mm.
which has the series Independent Lens, an independent film documentary series. And they basically exist to bring underrepresented, underserved community voices through independent film to the public. And they do so through partly being funded by Congress and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And again, I went through a lot of change there, but I noticed like there was diversity for me is not just like how many check boxes of like, okay, we have an Asian, we have, a black person, we have no. It's about how they identify, how deeply they're connected with that culture or their faith, their community, and then the voice that they bring to the table that somebody who might be brown just doesn't have the same, you know? And I think I'm a very deeply, like when I grew up, we had to come home from school and change into shalwar kameez, like traditional Pakistani clothes.
Mm.
And we had to, you know, my parents were like, you're speaking Urdu, you're speaking Punjabi, whether you understand it or not, like no English. And you know, I speak Urdu, Punjabi, Hindi, a little bit of French, English. I wear the clothes. I know the culture. I cook the food. I identify as a strong Muslim Pakistani woman.
Hmm.
My voice is different than somebody who maybe doesn't have the same connection.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
notice that we're making one, a lot of films about minority communities are not made by minorities.
Right,
They're
right.
made by like white people making films,
Hmm.
and there's no offense to that. That's great, but your view is different. What you bring to the table most of the time is going to be different than somebody from that community making a film about that community. And then the marketing also was like, I remember one, I'm going to tell a story, but I was working on a film there, and the film, you know, was two non-Indians making a film about a child in India, and the story was powerful and deeply, deeply moving. But they brought in like another token, like Indian girl at the organization to work on the pitch to get these filmmakers to decide that they wanted their film to be on independent lens, and and I was like so offended by that.
Hmm.
Like, you know, and that still happens a lot. It's like what the corporate boardroom looks like. And so I had a daughter and then I had another daughter back to back, and it was really hard for me to transition back into the workplace. I don't think they really um were made it very easy for a new mom to come back into the workplace, and so I left. And then I was going to be a mom and just like chill because I've been working since I was like 15 years old. And I got a call to join a Muslim org, to go and help them, you know, understand marketing and branding. And I was happy to go and explain it to them. And I left the meeting and they offered me a role. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not like your token Muslim girl that you want to work here. Like
Right.
it's not my vibe. But alhamdulillah, like, you know, it's some the things that are best for you, you might not know what they are or how they come to you. And that's where I started my journey of connecting my power of good, my power of marketing with something good for my community.
Yeah. And that's where me and you met
Mm.
because so I had been invited
That's where
to do.
you met me. I knew you.
Oh, okay, all right.
MashaAllah.
But man, but that's where we first really connected because I was invited by that organization to do one of their events because one of the leaders of of that organization reached out to me, and it's somebody who anything he asked me to do, I will do. There's certain people that I joke all the time. I'm like, man, I'll cancel my birthday. I'll cancel Eid. Like if you ask me, I'm going to be there. And this happens so often in in working with the Muslim community that somebody that I love personally is the one that makes the initial ask, and it's usually an elder, a leader, somebody that I look up to and revere as a teacher. So I say yes to them, but then it's the people who do the logistical planning that are actually going to decide what my experience is going to be, and then also whether or not I can even do my job. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many times I come into these spaces and it's like, man, these people have never been to a hip hop show. So they don't know what it's supposed to be like. Like, I'm like, have you been to a hip hop concert before? Oh, yeah, we saw last year at our convention when one of the hip hop artists performed. Like, that's not a hip hop show. So, like, they don't understand, like, what we're even attempting to do in terms of what the sound system's supposed to be like, what the stage is supposed to be like, what the lights are supposed to be like.
Hmm.
And man, so many of us have this experience where there's supposed to be a certain environment for me to even do what I do effectively. Like I've got to have, not to mention, is there a backstage? Do I have a private restroom where people aren't going to try to take selfies with me? You know what I'm saying? Can I get some water? Can I have a towel? Like I'm going to sweat on stage and when I get off stage, can I have a place to change my clothes? Can I have you know what I'm saying? Can I get a Wi-Fi password? Can I get some food? You know what I'm saying? Like, can I get some of my basic needs met so that I can even be productive or to even be effective?
Yeah.
And so, and I was there with another Muslim performer who performs mostly for the Muslim community. So he could not say these things to anybody. But I'm like, man, I don't need these gigs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm going to come in and tell, I'm like, whoever the person is, somebody's getting an earful. And so I sat down with the person, and it was you, and you had been brought in after the initial ask too. And so I started
Yeah.
telling you what the situation was like. And I just saw this look in your eyes that I was like, wait, no, this person is not from this person like has experience outside of the Muslim the same way I do.
Oh my
So like
God.
the fact that I'm coming from the for real music industry and you're coming from the for real marketing industry, and
Yes.
we're meeting in this space of like we're both here because we want to benefit our community, and just like because of the huge learning curve, experience gap, it's very difficult to do.
It's so I was so embarrassed. I mean, I don't know if you remember,
You
I
were
was super
horrified.
I was so embarrassed. At first, I thought like, "Oh my God, this is so cool. Brother Ali wants to talk to me." was like, I was like, "Come on, let's go in my office." And the other performer was there as well. But I was also super sick. Like I had walking pneumonia
Oh, I didn't know that.
the week before, and was recovering and had to make it to the pharmacy to pick up medication that after the show. And I I didn't go. I stayed because our conversation was so important. And one, it was so important for me because I didn't want you to have that experience with this org and have connect that to their brand, right? Because
Hmm.
again, it's what you feel about that organization, that company, that product is your connection to the brand. Two, it's I know it's really hard to do a win back, they call it. Three, my professional integrity, which is super important to me. Like where I work and where I have worked is, they'll just put the ugliest thing together. They'll use images, and I'm like, is that the press photo? Have you gotten like permission to use the
Oh
photo?
my
Like
goodness.
is that what's from their like you can't just cut and paste a low res picture from your Google search, and it happens. And when I throw a big fit about it, literally people think I'm being high maintenance, I'm being difficult. It's a power struggle for me because Amna didn't put that flyer together, so she must not think I'm doing a good job, when really it's like basic. So my professional integrity is so important to me because it's also part of my brand, you know? And so I had to stay there and I had to tell you, like, I promise you that like this will never happen again. And I was so embarrassed. I mean, I was brought in at a point where honorariums were already like, I didn't even know what it was. I didn't even know what was in the envelope. I didn't know
Oh
anything.
man.
I just literally got the thumbs up, like, we're good. He committed, onwards. And the other part of that for me is also this weird thing in like the Muslim orgs that I've worked is like, well, you're a woman. How could you possibly like call Brother Ali or his agent and negotiate and talk and, let one of the brothers take care of it? Now, they didn't say that, but you
Hmm.
don't have to say it. It
Right.
happens. And I'm
Right.
left out of a lot of those things because, like, I'm a woman.
Hmm.
And it's really annoying because I'm trying to do a job. Like, I'm not
Hmm.
trying to, um, convert someone. I'm literally trying to, do my job. And I think that, hint of, cultural or religious, I don't know what it is, but it happens a lot. And that's something I struggle with all the time.
Hmm. You know, it's interesting too that, well, first of all, the second we started talking, like I just, the second I opened my mouth, I went in there thinking, because I don't, I'm more so I'm thinking always, whenever I'm in a position where like, okay, I don't need this check, I don't need these gigs. But for the other artists in that space, that's how they live.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, the fact that I can speak up because I can lose these. And I mean, I had somebody fire me from a gig once, literally on Eid. Like
Oh
I
no.
was supposed to, like I had done this, I had done, I had flown to another country with another Muslim artist twice. I flew to this person's country to do their event. And I mean, like you saying, the most basic stuff I couldn't even get. They would announce me before I had confirmed with them. They were using the wrong photos. We showed up in another country and they're like, oh, by the way, here's the schedule. And I see that like I'm teaching things that I don't even know what the subject is.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I was thinking like, okay, I have to be the voice for the artists who need these gigs because they can't speak up in these times. But the second we started talking, your response and just your demeanor and your everything, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, no, this is different. I didn't realize that you weren't able to get your medication. No, I
It's all
appreciate
good.
it.
No.
You know, it's interesting too that like within the global Muslim community, there are cultures where women are bosses. And oftentimes in those cultures, oftentimes like in these like neo-traditional kind of Muslim spaces that are very professional, they're very modern. They're also like neo-traditional, like they see themselves as inheriting from this tradition, but they're very affluent. They're very, people that are like really highly educated people. In those places, I see that like those cultures in the global Muslim community. So, like when you go to West Africa, for example, it's young women that put the conference together, and they're bosses. Like there's this woman one time at this conference in the Gambia that I went to, and she was amazing. Like she was calling the shots about everything. This person sits here. This person does this. Feed this Okay, now go and serve this. All right, this person is late. So what we're gonna do is, all right, send out the tea now, and it would do. She was the boss. And one of the elders was like, she's impressive, right? And I'm like, yeah. How old do you think she is? I'm like, man, I don't know, 30. She's young. That girl is 16 years old. Just like,
Wow.
wow. And she was running the whole show. Or, there are certain cultures where it's just really understood because that's from our tradition. That's from
Yes.
our mother, Khadija, the first Muslim, the mother of our entire community, was the boss of the messenger of God, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah be well pleased with our mother. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so it's such a trip that like those same communities that, when you go there, there are folks that are kept out, that feel marginalized, that feel, that they also carry with them. Like those are the people that could be solving these communal gaps and problems that we seem to be having.
Yeah, I don't know I mean, 100%. And mashallah for that girl and the ones who are like her. But I don't know I mean, I'm probably going to speak out of like school here and maybe get some people pissed off. But I feel like in the Muslim orgs in the Muslim place is that a lot of, not all, a lot of them are founded by men, right? And a lot of the men who have started these orgs are surrounded by people who are yes men, who are
That's right.
groupies, for lack of a better word.
Yes. Yes,
Um,
ma'am.
and they surround themselves with that. And then
That's right.
they build an org. And I'm not trying to oversimplify the work because the intentions are always good and the work is important and alhamdulillah for
Yes.
all of it. But
And it's not
when
easy.
you
Those people are making big sacrifices too. Absolutely.
absolutely,
Yeah.
but when you're in it takes a strong boss, leader, visionary to be like, I need to surround myself with people who are smarter than me, people
Hmm.
who know this stuff. I
Yes.
need to pay those people,
That's right.
pay them what they would get paid. And I
Yes,
don't want to
ma'am.
hear about the budget because I know you're spending $75,000 to be at that convention
Right.
in Toronto. It's like I know what your budgets are being
That's right.
spent on.
Budgets are
And I
moral documents. That's a Dr. King quote.
exactly. So to not be visionary enough to do that and to be maybe insecure in, um, your male fragility, that you cannot say, I'm going to spend this money and hire this person who deserves that. Not I'm paying you this, so you better kill it. No, that's what you demand. That's what you deserve to be paid. And your experience is going to transform. And then I'm going to step out of the way and let you do you. And that doesn't happen. I mean, Zakat Foundation is different. It's an anomaly. Our founder, we have more women in our C-suite than I think any other Muslim org that I can like think of. But I consult for a lot of Muslim orgs, and
Mm-hmm.
I have worked, at some major Muslim orgs. And I mean, there was one campaign that I worked on, and the internal client was a very senior person, and
Mm-hmm.
he briefed me. We worked hand in hand. He loved the campaign. He supported it. He did a presentation to the entire, org saying this is what it is, and it's so smart, and it's exactly what we needed, and this was a strategic problem we were trying to get.
Okay.
And the campaign happened to be, the brief, which is, you get a strategic brief from the client, and you try to, creatively. So it said, um, colors that are rich and regal and make you feel like you're interacting with something that is like just next level regalness and sophistication. And this was also a campaign that was happening. It happened to fall during like the holiday season where everything is red and green.
Okay.
And so, and also the colors that I think like every Muslim org wants to be red and green with stars and moons over everything. So,
Right.
I wasn't I
Yeah.
wasn't trying to do
And
it.
gold. Yeah.
And so we did this uh, gorgeous campaign piece where the piece was like a black soft, they call it soft touch velvet, so when you touch it it feels like velvety, and it was gold embossed, and it was like really high end, and it was a stunt. So a stunt campaign is outside of your brand colors, outside of your normal thing. You can pull it out to do something that you want to really attract attention to a moment in time.
Okay.
And in my opinion, it was gorgeous. And in the client's opinion, it was gorgeous. And in a lot of the people, but one of the senior people didn't like it and came to me and said, these colors look like ISIS colors. And we don't want to use it. Black is not the color of Islam. Black is blah, 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 blah. Now, I also live in black. I like everything I wear almost every day is black. So I have an
Mm.
inclination to color. But I was like, it also is the color of the Kaaba, the most symbolic Muslim Islamic symbol in the world, is
Mm-hmm.
covered in black velvet and gold. And it's a regalness and it's a thing. But because of that
Absolutely.
one comment, the campaign was pretty much squashed. Like, there was not a trust in the expertise, there was not a trust in the strategy and the brief. I mean, we were allowed to do what we had already media planned and everything, but without that internal support of your creatives and your marketing and your
Mm-hmm.
branding, you're not going to get internal adoption. If you don't get internal adoption, you're not going to get external adoption. You're not going to get this like word of mouth excitement, this
Mm-hmm.
grassroots swell that you need. If
Mm-hmm.
your own people are trying to step in the way because of something that they have that they're not an expert in, it's sabotage, right? And so I get this a lot. Not That's an extreme example of something that happened, but even, people, they're like, well, we don't like that, or, we think our people will like this better. Or we just, can we really do like turquoise because it's this, and Islamic tiles? And it's like they have to get out of their own way. And the only way to do
Mm.
that is to have brilliant people that you invest in to build that. And there's a lot of men that orgs invest in, sorry to say.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of time they're kind of taken, for a ride. Like, there's lots of orgs who will go out and pay agencies hundreds and thousands of dollars to do stuff for them. And I'm sorry to say, I know these agencies and they'll take advantage.
Right.
When I worked at Zaytuna, when I went there, they wanted to bring a marketing agency on, and I was like, that's great. But who's going to check their work? Like, how are you going to know the agency is doing what they're supposed to do to the best of their ability
Mm.
unless you're just
Mm.
going to
Mm.
spend hundreds and thousands of dollars for someone externally to tell you how to do it? You need somebody to like manage that. And so I feel like there's this something where even if you have the expert, our leaders will get in the own way of the success of the organization. And it's harder for them, I personally feel like, to take advice from somebody who looks like me.
It's interesting too, sis, that one of the things I've noticed is that is a specifically, so I come from the world of Black Islam. So I came in I converted in the community of Imam Warathin Muhammad, rahimahullah, and was really close to, like, our community was cousins with the Nation of Islam,
Yeah.
cousins with the Five Percenters, cousins with the Moorish Science Temple, and like Black Islam. And in the world of American Islam, that's not elite, that's not that's not highly educated, that's not well-to-do. You don't see that same kind of hesitance with, I mean, women run the mosque, women, I mean, run the boards, they run they give directions. I came from a mosque that I was the imam for a while, and then this other man has been the imam for years. But everybody knows that Miss Arlene El Amin actually runs that mosque. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
Like what I'm saying? It's like I could be the imam. So I was the imam, and then her son has been the imam for the last like however many years, and taking nothing away from him. But everybody knows that she runs the mosque,
Yeah.
and and there is something directly connected, and there's a correlation there with. I think that's a community that knows that like we're not aspiring to join the American elite. Like we know that we don't necessarily have to be an opponent of the American elite, but we're at the very least an alternative to what works traditionally in America. So like we're not just here to beat these people to beat our oppressors at their own game. We're here to play our own game and actually invite them to this game.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That like we have a different understanding, we have a different orientation, we have a different platform. We need for our women to not just be at the table, but to like be like we would never imagine a world where women aren't, shaping the communal life and also shaping the messaging. And when I think about all of the Muslims in America, nobody's marketing, nobody's brand is as strong as the Nation of Islam.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We're talking about when you say Muslim to a person in the inner city, to most Black people, hip hop people, like anybody associated with urban Black culture. You know what I'm saying? When you say Muslim, they're going to picture a Black man in a bow tie with a certain posture and a certain way of speaking.
Yeah.
And it's known that religion is something that's good for us. Whether we believe in it or not,
Right.
that's a religion that's good for us. So when you talk about like nobody has branded our tradition and our community better than them. And it feels like it's absolutely tied to each other. And interestingly enough, the Nation of Islam, where like theologically we've got, there are big differences between what we would think of as historical traditional Islam and the Nation of Islam. But like as a creative person, as an artist, even as somebody that's not a member of that organization, I've been honored by them more. I've been in their newspaper multiple times. I've been in their magazine. I've been on the cover of their stuff before. They've had me speak they had me not only perform at their conventions, but they're like, Brother Ali, we need you to speak on the importance of culture and art and music and the tradition and the way that we communicate with people. It's really incredible that there's some sort of link between the desire to fit in and to join the status quo of America and the desire to provide an alternative to it.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and the one thing that comes to my mind, I mean, this is a much deeper conversation for someone who's better versed in it, but it's like, is unity, right? When I think of the Nation of Islam and their brand, I think of like unity, like they're united, they are there. And it's something that, the Jewish community has been able to do, regardless of where they fall on the spectrum, from Orthodox to liberal. But
Makes no difference how
um,
religious people are. How
yeah.
religious people, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
and it's kind of that thing I'm saying is that like we get in our own way, right? It's like
Mm.
we get in our own way, and it I laugh a little, but there's a lot at risk if we don't change this within our community and our organizations. And I mean, I'm talking from Muslim org perspective, but there there's this cultural appropriation has been happening for for hundreds of years. Spiritual appropriation for me is something that like I'm getting just more in tune to, and I see it happening a lot. And you know we don't own like the rights to things in our faith that
Hmm.
could be marketed or branded or taken. I mean, like yoga as an example has totally like lost its cultural connection and it has now been taken over by a completely different brand of like hippies from Utah. I mean, it's really funny.
Yeah, white ladies. Yeah,
Yeah.
white ladies. Yeah.
And so, what's at risk if our Muslim orgs are not using the faith in a way um, to get more people into the fold, to do more goodness, to save more orphans, to get more zakat, to talk about sadaqah, to bring in people in just like morality and humanity and community service and education and degrees, clothing. There's so much that the Muslim community needs to really take seriously because we are losing when it comes to that. And I mean, I will say even I get envelopes all the time from other non-Muslim organizations that ask for zakat. You know, um, Inside data during Ramadan, I'm competing neck and neck with St. Jude Hospital for the keyword zakat through Google. Like, people need to wake up and we need to start investing in people like me and the millions of others who are out there who are like me and take a risk and take a chance and spend the money and embrace their, out of the box thinking that doesn't go along with the traditional male dominated perspective of what it is or what it means to run an organization.
We talk every week about the Zakat Foundation, and this particular episode, I think you're really getting some of the background as to why I'm so excited to be working, not only with our sister Amna, but because of the way that Zakat Foundation has received her and her creative and outspoken ideas. It's just made me really excited to work with them. And the more that I learn about them and the more that I connect with them, the more I realize that my suspicions of them being a creative organization, like if they received her and empowered her the way that they did, what does that say about who's in these boardrooms and who's making these decisions? And the more that I engage them and interact with them and learn about them, the more I realize that my suspicions were true. Go to Zakat US on social media. You can check out all their programs. It's a Muslim-led organization, but they don't only help Muslims. They don't proselytize. Such a huge percentage of what we donate goes directly to the people that they're serving, and such a small percentage of it goes to overhead and things like that. You can also hit their website, which is Zakat Foundation, ZAKAT foundation.org. Find a way to get in, find a way to get down, find a way to become part of this incredible work that they're doing around the globe. Very honored to be joined by Zakat Foundation. Kind of rushing through these because of the fact that I just want to get back to this conversation with Amna Mirza. I'm really grateful and excited to be having it. But I want to let you know that the best way to connect with us and the work that we do is on brotherali.com. It's cool if you follow us on social media. I appreciate that. Thank you for liking and sharing and subscribing and following and all the stuff that you do. Thank you for doing that with the podcast. Thank you for doing that with the music. All of that really means a lot. We do not have a big marketing firm working with us. We don't have a big record label. There's not a big budget. It's me and Brendan and a few other team members that do this work together and try to get the word out about the things that we're doing. And so we really rely on communicating directly with you. And social media is just getting less and less focused on that. They're getting more and more, they're making all these changes that are super whack in my opinion. And they're less based on you saying, I want to connect with this creator. I want to connect with this artist. I want to connect with this person. And it more so is saying like, okay, what are the types of reels that you want to see? And all that stuff, which is what it is. But to stay connected with specific people that are providing something that we connect with, we got to find direct ways to do that. And for us, the best way to do it is brotherali.com. Go there, sign the mailing list. I only send out a handful of emails a year, and it's only when something new and exciting is happening. So if I'm putting out a new piece of vinyl that I think is going to sell out really quickly, or if we have a new tour or run of shows coming up, it's only for specific things that we think you would want to know about. I write them myself. We never sell your information. There's no spam. I don't blow you up every week just to do it. That's the first thing. The second thing is if you go to our merch area, you can see all the things we're doing. You go to events, you see all that stuff. But if you go to a section called Join, you'll be able to connect with what we call our caravan, which is a way that we seek to build community and also allow for the people that really believe in what we're doing to support it in creative ways. And we create specific stuff just for those people. So head to brotherali.com, sign a mailing list, go to the section called Join, and find a way to get down with this caravan. We love you. We appreciate you. Everything we do is because you support us. What's it like for you trying to do this in the Muslim community, like trying to bring marketing and branding expertise?
The challenge is like you have to trust marketing and branding especially, you have to trust the creative process. And it's really hard for
Mm-hmm.
people to do. It's really hard for traditional, even like men from subcontinent or, you know, who are very like scholarly or teachers and it's a challenge, but it's like we're not the first place to do this. There's brilliant $1 million successful campaigns happening across the board. And just to have to trust this creative process and creativity is something that our community doesn't really embrace with open arms. I mean, you know that better than me. And you're not relying on our community for your success, mashallah. You have
I would
made it
starve to
in
death.
mainstream. Right.
I would starve to death if I relied on the Muslim community. Present company excluded, obviously.
I mean, it's it's just so fascinating to me, and the conundrum of it is like, you know, how do we get better? And for me, I feel like I either need to be, you know, we're joking about this, you and me, is like I need to either be in Congress to be taken seriously or invited to speak at like, you know, panels and conventions and conferences, or I need to be fit into the mold of what people expect someone like me to be. I mean,
Yeah.
the number of times I've had people say like, "Oh, like, you don't look Muslim." It's like deeply insulting to me, you know? And so what is this like this you know idea or this identity of am I Muslim? You know, I joked about are you fan enough? It's like am I Muslim enough for you to
Mm-hmm.
take you know my insights. However, Zakat Foundation, our executive director, he surrounded himself with women. His
Mm-hmm.
wife is a strong Black woman. His daughters are incredibly strong and outspoken and, you know, just really wonderful people. And the organization has a lot of women in senior leadership positions. And he is not driven by ego. Like really, he is driven by like he is a humanitarian. He's the one like if you come to him and ask him for a job, he will call me the next day and say, I hired you a writer. He said he did some writing. He needed a job. I hired him. Like,
Mm-hmm.
who is this person? But that's how good he is when it comes to those kinds of things. And he trusts stuff. Like I've asked him, you know, our orphan campaign is something that you've helped us work on and spread the word and love on. I went to him with this idea. It felt like we needed to do it for no reason other than it just didn't feel right the way that we were doing it. And the data supported that. And he was like, but the program's doing well. Like our donors know what to expect. It's doing well. I was like, but it's not. That comes back to like, what are people going to say about me when I'm gone? Or I'm like, it just doesn't feel like the right thing to do. And he was like, all right, Bismillah, like do it. He trusts.
Are you talking
And
specifically about the racial component?
yeah,
So
the
that's one of
racial.
the things that to me that is so like incredible. Like after knowing you and knowing something about your resume, like I wasn't surprised, but I was really energized by that, by just the naming. Because you know what I'm saying? Like I'm so often in places where I'm just naming the racial dynamic in a place like in spaces where it's not welcome, where like nobody was asking for that. Just to acknowledge the anti-blackness, the white supremacy, or the aspiring white phenomenon of like well-to-do, affluent, brown Muslims, of
Yep.
just like one day there may be another expansion of whiteness, and we might just enter the promised land of fitting in and you know and it's one of the things that we're just constantly struggling against. So the fact that when looked at and you're not just talking about what happened before at Zakat Foundation, but the entire industry was showing people photos of orphans because it works, it tugs at the heartstrings. But for you to have made that observation so publicly that, like, look, people are racist whether they want to be or not. It's just a
Yeah.
reality of the last 500 years of living on Earth, that people tend to, their heartstrings tend to be pulled more by younger, lighter skinned girls. And so if we let people choose based on, the pictures that they see, they're probably going to choose younger, lighter skinned girls, and black boys are probably going to be
Yeah.
chosen less. So, I mean, just the danger that somebody could be in, not only in a particular organization, but in an industry, because people are so offended and just outraged if you were to suggest that race plays a role in the way that things are being done. So, like,
Yeah.
what was that process like for you to have that idea,
Yeah.
and then to present it, and to present it not only so before you got all the accolades for it, because of course once it works then everyone is like, I think you're so wonderful, like I think that's so great that you know what I mean, after it works. But if that thing doesn't work, I mean, it's like shooting the moon. Like, if it
I
doesn't work,
know.
you could become the outcast and the pariah of the entire orphan industry.
I know.
Like, what was that like for you?
It was, and it also, like, I get in so much trouble. Like, I just talk too much ish and I just get into stuff. It's like, dude, just do your marketing. Like, this is a
Right.
program. This is a program. This is not, it literally is not my job at all. It is an institutional, one of our pillar programs, and it's run by a brilliant, amazing programs team who are so good and so dedicated.
Hmm.
I, when I joined, like, I hated the process of, as a mother of daughters who are, dark skinned, and um I hated that, like, imagine someone looking at a picture of my kid to not decide, but to be moved by making this decision, because I think there's a lot of unconscious bias that happens. There's definitely a lot of, like, conscious bias, but there's this is like implicit and explicit. But I just hated it, right? And then on top of it, I also was like, man, pictures are, like, really low quality. They're all, like, from a marketing perspective. I'm like,
Right.
some poor guy went and took a picture with, like, his, like, flip phone and uploaded it on, like, dial up to the thing, and there's no resolution, and then we take it and slap it on our website. So again, it comes back to, like, a bad user experience. Like, if you're gonna pick from a lineup of pictures, at least have them better quality. So they look crappy, and then um they were always most of them were always sad, and, like, it hurts my feelings so much to, like, do you know how hard it would be to ask somebody for help? Like,
Hmm.
financially, to
Hmm.
survive? Like, it's when I, see the guy on the street or the family or whatever it is outside the store asking for a dollar or two. I don't care. Like, if I have, I'm just gonna give it. And it's like the courage it takes to ask a stranger to give you money because you need to do whatever you need to do with it. It's like, for me, you know, um, I just can't. I couldn't imagine being in that position. So the pictures really annoyed me. They were bad quality and the kids look sad. And our brand at Zakat Foundation America is really, like, to maintain the dignity and to treat each other as, like, humans. Then on top of it, I was like, all these so we would, for lack of a better word, we would go through our orphans in certain regions faster than they would be sponsored at a higher rate than other, because it would be like, oh, can you take Syria off the list? And my team does the website, so we take it. And it's like, oh, can you take Palestine off the list? But, like, I was never asked to take, like, Ghana off the list or Mali off the list. And so then I went in and I snooped around, which is like, I shouldn't have done it. And I was like, oh my God, like, my assumptions are true, that, like, these younger girls from with fairer skin and lighter eyes are sponsored almost at 3 times the rate of, like, the older boys from
Hmm.
um certain countries. And so I was like, we just have to change it. One, we have to change the user experience, the brand experience. We need to make it better and easier in a single click, Apple Pay, Google Pay, whatever it is. That we also have to change it on the back end so that when you sponsor an orphan, you have a really good experience. You can see their profile, it's digital. You can get an update, you get pictures from them, you can get like a letter, you find out what their situation is. But also stop it. Like, what does it matter what a child looks like if you're coming with the intention to give? Because you've made it to that page. So that means you
Hmm.
want to help, you want to give. So why are we forcing people to go back into this like colonial mindset of like, this younger, fairer girl needs my help more than that older boy? And I understand that people have connections to their homeland. Like, I have deep connections to Pakistan, and when possible, I want to help
Hmm.
people in Pakistan. So we kept
As
that
you
there.
should. I mean, that's a good thing. That's a virtue.
Ye Yeah, and so we kept that, but we got rid of the photos, we got rid of the age filter, we changed the algorithm so it goes to where most needed. So that's like the child who has been waiting the longest in our system or who the region has gone through some catastrophe or some disaster. We do allow you to select boy or girl, but that's it. And we saw and it was hard. So like my my executive director is like, we're good. Like we're doing this. People, and he really does because he's such a good man. He was like, people want to see into the eyes of the child and get like this connection. Otherwise, they think you're just sponsoring, like clicking and sponsoring, and it's not this emotional. And I was like, the emotional connection happens after you've sponsored the child. So you get their picture right away, you get their profile, you learn their details. But I don't believe that shopping for a kid through a bunch of pictures is the right thing to do. And
I
that's
remember
what it
you said
felt
it's not.
like.
It's yeah. You're like it's not a dating app. Like this isn't Tinder.
Yeah, it's not like a swipe right, swipe left. And it's funny because then the ad campaign that we worked with Smart Object Agency, Paul Elia, and he helped with the creative for this ad. We
Shout out
did,
to Paula Leah. That's the homie.
yeah.
Hilarious comedian too.
Oh, and he's so good. He's such a good guy, mashallah. And he was, help with the creative strategy on it, the vision for it, and his partner at the agency, Sasha, helped, and we won one of the best. And so the concept was this swiping left or swiping right. This entitled woman kind of sitting in her chair with her kids fighting over watching a video game, just the juxtaposition of like she's trying to do good because for whatever reason, and her kids are fighting in the background, but she's swiping over kids, and that literally is what was happening. I was like, no, and why do you swipe? Like, it has to be because you don't like the way they look, right? I mean, so we called it out, we changed it, we won an Hermes Creative Marketing Award, a platinum honor, which is the highest like award um, for creative marketing strategy, which is really important to me because that's what I do. It's not.
Yes.
It would have been great if it was like sound mixing or color
Right.
correction, and all of that would have been
But it's
amazing.
very
But the fact,
specifically the part that you are in charge of, and that where your heart is connected to the strategy.
exactly. And so alhamdulillah, so we we beat out like multi-million, like Target multi-million dollar budgets, and we had like a teeny tiny budget. Um, and the first child who was sponsored in our system when we flipped the switch was a 17-year-old boy from, I think, Niger. I have to
Mm-hmm.
be, but he would have. Who's going to pick him? I mean, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
trying to, I don't, it's not that I don't have faith in humanity and people. We have amazing people. But what this showed is that when people are given the option and when they have the intention to do good,
Mm-hmm.
these filters, these things that we project on them because of our own biases, because of our own impact of colonialism and the mindset of, I think you had said like the white man's ice is colder, whatever
Right.
those things are that play into your thinking. When you remove that, goodness comes through and people do the right thing. And our orphan sponsorship program has continued to excel. We've seen amazing increase in the number of children who are sponsored. And I think that is not. Here's the thing, is not just because we changed the branding or the positioning of it, we also changed the user experience, the back end to make it really easy
Mm.
and a good overall brand experience for our donors. And alhamdulillah, nobody has called and complained and said, I want to see the picture of the child before I sponsor the child. Nobody has said it. And so it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I encourage a lot of Muslim orgs have, don't use photos or have stopped using photos, but there's a lot of non-Muslim orgs that are really, still heavily using photos to get their orphan sponsorship program, in front of donors. And I just think that we need to call for like a universal like ban. I feel like there should be some laws on using children's pictures to solicit support.
Well, it's such a major, like, just your not only insight and just like your trust for what you know is right, that for you to have an observation that's not only not popular, but it actually, like, that specific observation is really, like I said, is really insulting to people. Whether you're even without the intention to assault, like, I don't think you're doing this intentionally, because I've done the same thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, my daughter's school when she was in kindergarten, I went to volunteer as a parent volunteer thing. And my daughter was going to a school that's mostly Somali, or like a Somali magnet school. So it's like half white, half Somali. And she was like, no, you have to be a white mom. My 5-year-old daughter was like, you have to be a white mom to volunteer.
Wow.
And she was like, you can't be a dad, you can't be Muslim, you have to be like a white mom to volunteer. And I was like, oh, really? And so I went and talked to the teacher about it. And I was like, so how many of the, I was asking her, like, who are the moms that you're getting? And she's like, well, we have a sign up list that we have and I'm like, okay, what you've proven is that sign up list is really successful for getting white moms to come and volunteer and like read to these kids, but you're not getting dads and you're not getting some Somali people and you're not getting such a big, portion of it. And I mean, she just like openly wept as though I had like insulted
Wow.
her. You know what I
Wow.
mean? Are you saying I'm racist? Like
Wow.
she,
Oh my gosh.
and I'm like, man, I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying a sign up list gets these results. That's all I'm saying.
You know what she did to you? She did, there's a book, you have to read this, Brother Ali. I'll send you a copy, inshallah. It's called White Tears, Brown Scars, and it's by
Mm.
Ruby Hamad. And she talks about this, like, weaponizing white tears. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I'm sure I made a lot of people angry.
But just your not only observation, but just your trusting your own reality and like your own relationship with the truth, which is your relationship with Allah. It's a deeply spiritual principle to say like I am well aware, like my body, my mind, I know what's happening here. And to have that type of allegiance to make the sacrifices to do that, and then also to have the courage to speak it, and also the foresight and the expertise to be able to implement something like
Mm.
that. You know what I mean? And it really feels like one of many culminations of all of the sacrifices that you've made over the years to get closer and closer to something that feels like you're able to bring your artistic vision to life in a way that also speaks to what your heart is saying and what your heart
Yeah.
is and your soul is asking for. It's just so dope to see
Oh.
somebody win doing that.
And also, thank you, thank you. I mean, and also, kudos to the leadership at Zakat Foundation for allowing me to do it because, like I shared the
Absolutely.
example before of like, campaigns have been killed for lesser reasons, and doing the right thing is really important. And I hope it's something that I can, continue to do. There's a new project that I'm pitching, and I really piss everybody off because they're like, "Amna, stop it! Like, stop, stop! This is not marketing, this is not branding, this is not communications. This is like a program thing." But alhamdulillah, because we're all really deeply wanting to do good and help, and it does take a lot of that because with smaller budgets, smaller
Mhm.
teams, I'm working a lot, and I'm a very hands-on mom. I'm a very hands-on, homemaker. Uh, I work a lot, and it just is. But I have to do it because it might be the only way I'm going to get into heaven.
I feel you. When you were talking about, and it feels like a kind of full circle thing, but when you were talking about what will people say when I'm gone, And I just think about what you're saying in terms of marketing being the way that people understand us and that needing to be authentic. There's something I heard recently that really gave me pause, that, you know, the Muslims believe we have an entire life in the grave. Like, it really matters to us.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're told that people are aware when they're buried, and like we bury our dead ourselves with our hands, we wash them, we bury them. And that we're aware of the people that are around, and we hear when people leave, we hear the footsteps of when they come and when they leave, when they visit. I just heard in a lecture recently that when people stand and, you know, extol the virtues of a person that's passed away, that there's an angel that actually asks the person's soul, is that true? You know what I'm saying? And there's a prayer from that Yasin Bey always recites, and it's from one of the early Sahaba, that like when people are praising us, it's almost like we want to be almost divorced, or like let off the hook a little bit from the praise that people give us. Like, Allah,
Yeah.
forgive me for what they don't know about me. Make me better than what they think I am. You know what I'm saying? And,
Yeah.
and you know, don't hold me accountable for the praise that they're giving me that I might not deserve. But the idea of an angel asking the person, like, is that true? These good things that they're saying about you, is that true? And so, like, we're encouraged to even be moderate with the way that we praise people in death,
Yeah.
because we can, you know, we can exaggerate. I think about that, or I think
Oh,
about the
yeah.
Prophet ﷺ, like standing up in
So-
front of the Meccans and saying, "What if I told you there was an army on the other side of this mountain about to attack us?" And they're like, "You're Alameen." Like, that was his brand, sallallahu
Yeah.
alaihi wasallam.
So,
You're Alameen. You're the trustworthy one. We believe anything you say. And
yeah.
he's like, well, I'm telling you that all of these deities that you keep for individual communities, that really the divine source of all things is one, and everyone has access to it, and I'm the messenger. They're like, oh, you tricked us, you know. But when you think about
SubhanAllah.
just like how important it is to be responsible with the way that we communicate to others,
Yeah.
and how necessary that is, and just what
Yeah.
a really important science it is, particularly in these times.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, it's hard to be Muslim in these times.
Mm-hmm.
And I find myself, you know, challenged at times trying to get our own people to support our, you know, our at Zakat Foundation, even our fundraising campaigns and
Mm-hmm.
different programmatic work that we do. And this, you know, Islamophobia is something that, you know, we are naive to think that it doesn't impact our own community and that it's only for like the non-Muslims to use against us. But that, you know, the fact that I have to, you know, constantly say, you know, 94 cents from your dollar is goes towards our programs. Like, that's a really amazing distribution
Yeah.
of donor dollars. Um, but that it almost, I have to do it because I have to get this trust from the community and from people. And but I don't know that they ask the same questions when they're donating to Red Cross or
Mm-hmm.
somewhere else. And it is something that you know, I think we need to do better at supporting our, you know, this like donor fatigue, or, you know, oh, if I give to you and I give you and I give this, it's like, um, you know, it bothers me, but it's because we've been trained to think that like, I don't know if I should trust that Muslim organization. I don't know if they're like legit or, you know, up and up, or are they, you know, where are they really sending their money? What are they really doing? And it's my job to build that trust with
Right.
our community and our network
Yes.
and beyond. You know, my vision and my goal for, you know, however long I'm blessed to stay at the organization is like, I don't want it to just be a Muslim org. I want it to be the leading charity, like the leading philanthropic organization that's going to do this impactful humanitarian work across the globe and at home. And, you know, um, it just is really important to me. And we have to think that way. We have to have that kind of intention and do the work and make it happen.
And I think that that's also reflected. I know this is just one very small like piece of the overall puzzle, but in you guys supporting this podcast, you know, that only a small section of the people that we've had on the podcast have been Muslims, and so far we've only had one Muslim teacher. You know what I mean? And inshallah, we'll have more. It's funny that they're
Inshallah.
so hard to book. Like it's funny that like booking rappers and booking sheikhs are so they're the same thing. Like most of my friends are artists and sheikhs, and they're so similar. But like so like rappers will be like, yeah, I'll absolutely do the podcast, and then like trying to actually schedule a time with them to sit down
Yeah.
and like how do we actually need to make this happen, and then realizing like unless we get their assistant involved, it's not going to happen. You know what I'm saying? So like Brendan starts talking to their assistant and then we're able to do it. Man, the same
I
is so
hear
true
you.
with the sheikhs.
It is very hard. I've sent out a few emails to some sheikhs and I'm still waiting for them to reply. So maybe this might get me on somebody's radar. Like
You know what I mean?
I should reply to the sister. She knows what she's talking about. But yeah, I mean
Absolutely.
it's uh I'm honored. I mean, I can't, us supporting your podcast before it became, what it is, mashallah, was really important to me because supporting creators is really critical. I mean, especially in our community, whether the content is like Muslim centric or not, it just, um, we get mad when I'm gonna like, when our creators do things for mainstream or get into Hollywood or to get, and it's like, what are they doing? And it's like, those are the same people that you were not supporting, that you
That's right.
were, you didn't ask for their, writer, like what kind of stuff do they need? You weren't treating them like, and when they get mainstream success, we're happy, but then we want to start claiming them, right? Then we want to
Right,
start like,
right.
and I just, it's not genuine, it's not authentic. Like the relationships that I have with people, my personal, professional relationships, but also the relationships that Zakat Foundation has with teachers and scholars and sheikhs and doctors and creators and all of that. Again, your listeners are going to roll their eyes maybe, but it's like about that brand experience that you have, and it has to be authentic. So when this came up as an opportunity, one, I was so honored that we were asked first. Like that was like, wow, it means I'm kind of doing my job right, and people, respect or know that what they're going to get when they work with me. But also, what an opportunity! And like, why would I say no to this? Like, I'm not going to overthink it. And so the budget has changed from like, set episodes to set episodes. And you and your team have been so gracious to allow us to kind of be flexible and, always send the check late. But alhamdulillah, it's
Man,
been,
it really means a lot though because of the fact that, like you're saying, like just having that similar kind of outlook that, what we have to offer is important not only for us, but also it's valuable for the world. And we should at least be in the conversation because we have a perspective that is an alternative that should at the very least be considered. It doesn't have to be subversive. It doesn't have to
yeah,
be combative. It can be. If we need to do that, we could do that too. You know what I mean? But at the very least, it's
yeah,
like this is a perspective that should be considered. And so for you guys to support this show with the people, the guests that we've had on, and then also just to be able to say to the listeners of this show of this podcast that Zakat Foundation is a good place for you to donate money. Like even if you're not like you don't have to be Muslim to understand like the humanitarian nature of this organization. That is dope. It's a dope organization. These programs are dope, and also I I asked you to be on the show because of you and because of your work and because of your vision, not because of the fact that we also have this connection, but it's really evidence of the fact that when we recognize each other as like, okay, we're really our co-travelers. We're working on the same project.
yeah, yeah, alhamdulillah. I mean, I really think, the reward for good is nothing but goodness. And so it's something that drives me deeply daily. And I see the same for you. And, may your podcast be even more successful. And we'll be celebrating your 5 year or 10 year, anniversary of the podcast,
Me.
inshallah, in the future. And it just is, these voices is what's going to move our community forward. And we cannot get stuck in this echo chamber. Like it really is scary to me. And we need to trust the creatives because really, you know, we're the ones who are going to move things forward, and we need the support of the community. And we're doing it little by little. I hope that we're able to leave a legacy behind for our children that are running these multi-million-dollar humanity organizations, and even for-profit Muslim organizations. I'm all about it. It just is, it's our time, and it can't happen without the investment from our community.
MashaAllah. You've been so generous with your time. I really appreciate it. And yeah, it just really means a lot. Inshallah, we'll have to talk, because I have usually, especially when I'm talking to people, I know I get to the end of these and I'm like, oh, dude, there's a big list of questions here that I didn't even get to. So hopefully we'll be able to get on your calendar again, inshallah.
I look forward to more voice memos from you.
Allah. Allah bless you. Inshallah, we'll see you soon.
Thanks so much.
Special thanks to Amna Mirza. We really appreciate her for just being so generous with her time and with her wisdom, and with her perspective and experience, and for just sharing her truth with us, her story with us, her insights, her aspirations and hopes and reflections. It just really means a lot. These are the people that I'm very, very grateful to live with, to do life with, to be in community with, and to be in partnership with, and then also to be able to share these amazing people with my community. I come from I have experience with different communities, and bringing them together is something that really just gives me a lot of joy. So we're very, very grateful to Amna Mirza. We always shout out Mansour Panawala. We always shout out Last Word and Mark from Medina Hip Hop, and Darian Washington, and all of the people that just help this podcast be what it is. Special shout out to the people who listen and give me feedback and give me ideas, because that matters a lot. So shout out to Chaplain Shane Atkinson, Imam Shane, who is on the podcast. There's an episode with him. Shout out to Aida Rashid, who is working on a really dope project. And when that comes to fruition, inshallah, we'll have her on the podcast. Shout out to my man, Sage Francis, who hopefully we'll have him soon, inshallah. Man, there's so many people that listen to this show and give me feedback on it, and it really matters to me. Like, it really shapes what I do, and it shapes the way that we think about it. The Travelers Podcast is produced by Brendan Kelly, aka BK1, and it's a product of Travelers Media. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. See you next week.